I've been pretty consistent in talking about where Georgia's at in history, in Georgia's history, and how, look, these are the glory days, and they should be competing for a national championship every single season. That is how I feel about Georgia. I think that that's just where the program's at right now. That's just the reality. Peter Burns, ESPN, SEC Network, covers a lot of the SEC. He's been very positive about Georgia, especially in the last year. And during SEC Media Days week, he had a lot of things to say about Georgia that were very good. But one of them, I think, is true. I just think it's true. Going forward, this is what he said. Going forward, as long as Kirby Smart is the head coach at UGA, there is no excuse for them to miss the college football playoff. That's where we're at. And I agree with that. There is no excuse for Kirby and the Dawg unless, a very particular thing happens in the season, like a player goes down or something like that. Georgia's in a position where not only is it going to be in the top 12 probably every single year for the next, as long as Kirby Smart's there and doing what he's doing, but top 4, top 5 consistently, and that's what it's been. How did, outside of Kirby's first year, which was 2016 and was the Liberty Bowl or the Tax Alert, I don't even remember, but a not great bowl game. In 2017, they win the Rose Bowl, national playoff. They finished number 2 because they lose to Alabama. The next year, they were number 5 or 6 heading into the college football playoff. They finished top 10. They finish top 10 because they lose to Texas. Finished top 5 the year after that, beating Baylor in 2019. 2020, top 10, right? They won a Peach Bowl against Cincinnati. Obviously, they end up number 1 in 21 and 22, and they end up top 5 after beating the crap out of Florida State. So, but not only have they been, in the top 12, they've been in the top 8. They've been in the top 4 most of these years. And we're talking about Kirby Smart. This is year 9. Year 9. We're almost a decade in to the Kirby Smart era at Georgia. And they've been competing for a national championship since the second year he's been there. They've been contenders to win the national championship from year 2. Is there an excuse for them to miss a 12-team playoff? And it's only going to be 12-team for 2 years before they expand. And I don't know if they'll ever go back down after they expand this thing, because we're talking about dollars lost for a lot of people if they, opportunity cost, right? The opportunity cost of going back down to a smaller playoff just doesn't make sense for college football, right? In terms of financials. Well, this year, I think that they should not only be in the top 12, I think that they'll end up I think they'll get a bye. I think Georgia's going to win the SEC most likely. So probably going to have a bye. Then you just look ahead and you think, with recruiting over and over, why would that stop? As long as Kirby Smart and the coaching staff is doing what it's doing, why would they stop being a top 12 team? I mean, the realistic thing with this playoff, and maybe I am not articulating myself as well as I usually do because I feel like I'm stumbling over my words, but you think about a schedule like Georgia's. This is as tough as it's going to be. Pulling it back up, even though I pretty much have it memorized. But I don't know that it gets much tougher than it does this season. And we know that Georgia's a championship contender, but we're talking about this under the assumption that Georgia's has a championship contending roster pretty much every year as long as Kirby Smart's the coach. But how many times are they going to play a ranked Clemson, a potentially ranked Kentucky, at Alabama, at Texas, Tennessee? Half their schedule is going to be ranked, potentially more than half of it, if Georgia Tech's solid and cracks into the ranking, or if Auburn or Mississippi State or somebody's better than we think. We're talking about like half of, maybe 7 of these 12 teams being a ranked team and having to beat a lot of ranked teams on the road. And this is as tough as it's going to be, because what's going to happen in 2025 is they're going to play all those best teams at home in Sanford Stadium. And that's going to be, quote unquote, easier. Yes, they're going to get LSU roped into their schedule. They're going to get Oklahoma roped into their schedule. It's not going to be the combination of Texas, Bam, and Ole Miss every year. It's going to be different on a yearly basis who they play. But if it doesn't get tougher than this, then you look at Georgia as a championship contender, and are they ever going to lose 4 games? Because I think that you can maybe slip into a 12-team playoff. Let's say Georgia just barely loses to Bama, barely loses to Texas, and barely loses to Ole Miss. What if they're all like field goal games? And those teams are all in the top 12, and Georgia kind of spanks everybody else. Then they win 3 games, and they probably make the college football playoff as like the 11 seed, or maybe the 10 seed. It's never going to be harder than this. And yes, there will be a year, maybe, where Kirby Smart and Georgia, that combination is not as fruitful as it's been, and they go 8-4 in the regular season or 7-5. I doubt it. I highly doubt it, because why? Recruiting class after recruiting class, finding good coaches after finding good coaches. You look at next year's recruiting class, and they're going to bring in a lot of guys. They're going to bring in another quarterback, and they're going to have replace. I have been notorious is not the right way to put it, because I've only said it a couple of times. I think that Georgia takes a little bit of a step back in 2025 in terms of talent, roster, everything. I just think that when I go down this list and I say Carson Beck will be gone, Trevor Etienne probably be gone after this year, I'll say 3 of the starting offensive linemen, a couple receivers, 7 guys on offense, your 2 best defensive players in Malachi Starks and Michael Williams, maybe another defensive back, a linebacker. You're missing Smile Mondon after this year, probably 2 of your defensive linemen. I mean, Georgia is subject to get 15 guys drafted again next April, next May. Well, then I look on the depth chart and I say, okay, well, how do I project the 2025 lineup to look? Just right now, think about Gunnar Stockton. They're going to have a loaded offensive line, because not all those guys are going to go to the NFL, and they've got people that are just as good as them right behind. They've been recruiting running backs pretty well. They're still going to have some receiver talent, and they've been hitting the portal for that. They've been recruiting tight ends better than anybody else, right? Jaden Riddell and Lawson Lucky will still be in line if Benjamin Yurosek and Oscar Delp go. Colton Heinrich is there as well. On defense, in 2025, they're going to have the best linebacker duo in college football in Raylan Wilson and C.J. Allen, unless one of them transfers. In the secondary, who's going to take Malachi Stark's job? Probably K.J. Bolden, maybe. A 5-star. And they've got all sorts of 5-stars. They got Ellis Robinson waiting for his turn. DeMello Jones waiting for his turn. Guys that they're really excited about. I look at what they have behind in the front 7. Gabe Harris is a sophomore. JJA, Joseph Jonah Ajanye, freshman. Freshman transfer, Xavier Micleod. They're going to be guys in year 3 that are getting their first year as starters. They're going to be guys in year 1, year 2. It's a team that has a lot of depth in its youth. And I look at 2025 and I say it's going to be worse, but and it probably will be worse. Like, if we're just being honest with ourselves, Georgia's probably not going to be as good in 2025 as they are in 2024. Just don't project. But that's what they said. That's what they were saying about them from 21 to 22. And then you go back to what Peter Burns is saying. There's no excuse for them to make the college football playoff. I think they're going to make the college football playoff with that roster. I'm not even talking about that anymore. I'm talking about, are they going to be a championship contender? That's the whole point. Is I'm so confident that Peter Burns is right, and that there's no excuse that they'll make the college football playoff on us every year, because they're competing for championships every year. And I mean, it would take Georgia losing 3 games probably for them not to make a college football playoff. They haven't done that since his first season. They haven't lost 3 games since Kirby's first season. 3, I guess 2019 or 2018 UGA football 2018 record. But that was after the fact, that was in postseason when they lost. They 11-3. In the regular season, they won 11-1. All right, that was an SEC championship loss and a bowl game loss. Those would have been postseason losses. Georgia wouldn't have done that. So they've lost 2 regular season games only one time outside of Kirby's first year, and that was the COVID year. Clearly the worst team that they've had out of all those teams. So Peter Burns is right, in my opinion. Ryan Curley, Dawg Post. Link is below for the newsletter.